Attention IGCSE students. Are you ready to master the art of summary writing? Introducing Summary Writing Masterclass, your ultimate guide to acing the summary task in the IGCSE exams. In this power-packed lesson, we'll delve into the intricacies of summary writing by giving valuable tips about how to approach the task, how it is graded, and finally, a sample answer of a real task from a past paper. So, if you're ready to transform your writing abilities and achieve top scores, don't miss out on Summary Writing Masterclass. Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest lessons and tips for IGCSE success. First of all, know that the summary task in the IGCSE exams demands precision, requiring you to write it within a strict word limit. Remember, your summary must be a minimum of 100 words to ensure sufficient depth and understanding. But beware! Exceeding the maximum limit of 120 words can result in valuable marks being deducted. The total mark allocated for this exercise is 16 marks, 8 marks for the content, and 8 marks for the language. In the summary writing, you will be given a text, which is an article from a newspaper or a magazine, and they are going to ask you to summarize a specific part of it. They do not ask you to summarize the whole text because it will be impossible for anyone to summarize a whole text in 120 words, so you don't have to include any information that does not link to the summary, and do not include your opinions at all. For your content, you'll be rewarded with up to 8 marks, reflecting your ability to extract the main points and key details effectively. You have to stick to the question itself. For example, if you are asked to write a summary giving advice on using a phone to take photographs, stick to that. Do not talk about using cameras. So how many content points do you need? You need to get around 8 content points, and each content point will get 1 mark. So if you get all the content points or all the 8 points, you will get a maximum of 8 marks. But if you got 9 content points, in that case, you cannot get more than 8 marks. You have to ensure that all the key information is included in the response before awarding a mark, which means that if one content point is not complete, or if you've got half a content point, then it will be discarded. It will not be counted as a full content point. So, let's say, for example, that you wrote 8 content points. 6 of them were complete, and we had 2 content points, which were not complete. So in that case, you will get 6 out of 8 marks. Also, you will not be awarded for the repetition of an idea, even if it's written in a different way, which means, for example, if you've got around 7 content points and then you decided to repeat the 2 endpoint in a different way, but it has the same meaning. In that case, you cannot take 2 marks for that content point, but you will get 1 mark. The maximum number of words is 120, so if anything is written after 120th word, it will not be counted. So let's imagine that you've written 7 points till the 115th word, and then starting from 116th, you wrote your 8th point, which exceeded the 120th word. So in that case, the examiner will stop after the word 120, so this content point won't be complete and it cannot be counted. So you will get 7 out of 8 in the content mark. What about the language itself? The summary task in the IGCSE exams is not just about capturing the essence of a passage, but also demonstrating impeccable language skills. But don't forget, the language you employ is equally vital. A remarkable command of vocabulary, grammar, and structure can earn you another 8 marks. Candidates need to focus on summarizing relevant information, accuracy of language, cohesion, and observing the word limit. The accuracy of language is related to grammar, vocabulary, spelling, and so on. Cohesion means using linking words like furthermore, in addition, moreover, however. The most effective summaries are those which demonstrate an understanding of the text and attempt to paraphrase the main ideas outlined in the question. Paraphrase here means using your own words. So, please try not to use the same words which are in the original text. Try to use your words. What if you couldn't find a synonym for a word? For example, the word computer. We do not have a synonym for computer. So in that case, try to change the structure of the sentence itself. For example, try to change it from the active voice to the passive, something like that. So you need to ask yourself here, to what extent are points organized and coherent? Is there reliance on the language from the text, or has the student attempt to use their own words? And how accurately does the student use vocabulary and grammatical structures? So put all that to practice so we can fully understand it. Here, I need you to pay attention. We have here a question, and this question was taken from a past paper March 2021 0510 paper 22. Okay, so let's move to exercise 4. So in exercise 4 here, you are asked to write a summary about what the writer learned about perfumes in his class. So the first thing we need to understand is that they did not ask us to summarize the whole text. They only want us to summarize a specific part of the text. So here we need to focus on what the writer has learned about perfume in his class. So let's start. We are going to read, and as we are reading, we are going to highlight all the points we need for our summary. My friend Julia is going to read, and I am going to explain.
My first perfume class. I've been fascinated by perfume from an early age ever since I saw a TV advert for a men's perfume that claimed to smell of flowers and motorbikes. How could something possibly smell of both those things together? I knew my dad used that perfume, so I rushed to get the bottle, opened it, and took a deep breath. There was the smell of flowers and motorbikes exactly as they claimed. I couldn't believe it. So last month, when I heard about a company that runs one-day perfume classes for beginners, I decided to sign up.
So in the first paragraph here, do we have something which is related to what the writer learned about perfumes in his class? No.
The day started with the talk about the origins of modern perfume.
So this is the first thing he learned. He learned about the origins of modern perfume. So this is point number 1.
After which we went to the classroom. It was exactly as you'd imagine, half science lab, half artist studio, with bottles of all shapes and sizes full of colorful liquids. First of all, my fellow students and I were asked to smell various cards, each one having been sprayed with a different well-known perfume, so that we could begin to identify some common perfume ingredients.
Okay. So here identifying some common perfume ingredients is also something he learned. How did he learn that? By being asked to smell some cards so that they can identify perfume ingredients.
This was much harder than I thought it would be. The instructor also explained that perfume can consist of both natural and man-made elements.
So this is also another thing that he learned. Perfume can consist of both natural and man-made elements.
And used terms like note and accord to describe what we were smelling. I hadn't realized that the perfume industry has its own specialist vocabulary.
So also, this is the fourth thing he learned, the special vocabulary used in the perfume industry. We can call that jargon, which is a specific vocabulary that is used for specific industry. For example, doctors have their own jargon, engineers have their own jargon, and I think each job has its own jargon.
By the end of the morning, I couldn't believe how much there was to know. Soon it was lunchtime and a chance to get to know my classmates a bit better. We came from a variety of backgrounds, but we all shared a love of perfume and a desire to understand more about it. Some of the other students had attended classes at the studio before, but these had focused more on how certain perfumes make people feel.
This does not have to do with anything he learns. We are talking about the writer and what he learned in the class, not what other people learned.
This afternoon's session, according to the program, would involve us discovering which ingredients go well together.
So this is another thing they discovered, which ingredients go well together.
Something I couldn't wait to find out more about. Back in the studio, it was revealed that our instructor would be showing us how to create our own perfume, which we'd be able to take home. So also he learned how to create his own perfume. I started collecting all my favorite ingredients from the shelves, loads of honey scent, some of leather, and some bitter orange. While I was doing this, the instructor emphasized the importance of keeping a record of the exact amounts used.
So here we have to mention the instructor emphasized, because if I did not mention the word the instructor emphasized, the point will not be complete. Most students actually lose marks in the summary because of that thing. But how would I know that my point is incomplete? How would I know that my summary is somehow complete? The idea is simple. When I try to read my summary on its own, away from the original text itself, I should be able to understand it. If I needed to go back to the main text to understand a specific point, then there is a problem with our own writing. So make sure that after you write your own summary, somehow read it. Ask yourself if someone has read that summary without going back to the original text. Will they be able to understand it or not? Okay.
The result of my first perfume creation was, well, rather strong. I'd completely forgotten the guidance on how to get the right balance between the different ingredients.
So also, this is something he learned.
Luckily, there was time for another go, and this time I was more careful. My second creation was much better. Before we knew it, the day was over. We'd covered so much. I hadn't realized, for example, that shops use perfumes to influence customers' purchasing choices, just like they use background music. Who would have thought that? The class had been surprisingly hard work, but I'd had a great day and left thinking I could happily spend a week learning more. For now, though, it was time to go home, taking my perfume with me.
So after reading that, we were able to get how many points here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So that's great because we actually need 8 points. Our job now is to rewrite these points in 120 words. We cannot write in more than that, and we cannot write in less than 100. The second thing we need is to use our own vocabulary. Try your best not to repeat the same words. Okay, if you had to repeat some words, try to change the structure of the sentence. So let's look at an example of something I'd written by myself, then we can see. So, here if you looked at my example here. First of all, you have to start with a sentence that tells us of what the summary is about. You get this sentence from the question itself, and the question is write a summary about what the writer learned about perfume in his class. So, I should write something like that. The writer learned many things about perfume in his class. But instead of saying the writer learns many things about perfume in his class, I did it this way: the writer has learned a great deal about perfume in his class. Okay, initially he learned about the history of contemporary perfume. Okay, so this is point number 1, the history of contemporary perfume. So I used here the word history instead of the word the origins, and I used contemporary perfume instead of modern perfume. I also used the word jargon instead of the word specialist vocabulary. Then he was asked to smell different cards to identify some typical perfume ingredients, which might include both natural and synthetic components. In the second sentence, also, I included 2 content points. The 1S1 was able to identify some typical perfume ingredients. So here, instead of saying identify common perfume ingredients, I said identified typical perfume ingredients, which might include both natural and synthetic components. I used the word synthetic instead of man-made. After that, he understood which ingredients go well together, and this was followed by explicit directions. So here, instead of saying his instructor emphasized, I said explicit directions given by his instructor to maintain a record. I also used precise instead of exact amounts used. He also learned how to strike the proper balance. So I used strike the proper balance instead of how to get the right balance between the myriad of ingredients. This ultimately led to the creation of his own perfume. So he was able to create his own perfume. But instead of create, I said creation finally. He discovered that perfumes are used by shops to steer clients' purchasing decisions. So here, instead of influence customers' purchasing, I said steer clients' purchasing decisions. So here I mentioned all the content points, so I should get 8 out of 8 in the content part. What about the language? I tried to make my points organized so that they become more clear. My points were coherent because I tried to use cohesive words before the beginning of each content point. For example, in the first point I used the word initially, after that I used the word then, and after that, then, I used followed by then, also, then, ultimately, and finally. So please try to include at least 5 or 6 cohesive words. Try to use one word connecting word like first. Moreover, furthermore, because we are limited by the number of words. So the word additionally, for example, is better than in addition. Also, I tried not to rely on the language from the text. There were no grammatical mistakes or no structural mistakes. So in that case, it will be up to the examiner, but I think I will never get less than 7 in the language. So this summary will get at least something around 15 out of 16. Before we end our session, let's read the examiner report, which is published by Cambridge itself, to get an idea of how Cambridge examiners mark or correct our writings. So according to the examiner report here, it is said,
This proved to be a challenging exercise for many. by including unnecessary details, such as the writer's reasons for joining the class and information about his classmates. Responses frequently went beyond the required length. This meant that some content points often came at the end and could not be credited as 120 words had already been written.
So, some students were able to find content points, but they wrote them after the 120th word. Therefore, these points were not credited.
Less successful attempts repeated learned about throughout the entire response.
Also, this is something not good. Try not to repeat the same structure. It was easier for me to say, at first the writer learned about the history of perfume. Then, he learned how to identify common ingredients. After that, he learned how to create his own perfume. And finally, he learned that many shops use perfumes to steer or to influence customers' purchasing decisions. So repeating the same structure will be bad for your mark, okay?
Frequently switched between first and third person, which made the response confusing, or simply listed some relevant points with cohesive devices, which were not always appropriately used.
Pay attention. Here we are talking about the experience of the writer. So according to the question here, it says what the writer learned about perfumes in his class. So we are talking here about a male writer. We are talking about the writer, not ourselves. Don't say, for example, I didn't know, or I learned something very important about perfume. No, it's not you who learned. It's the writer who learned. Okay, so use a third person, not a first person point of view.
In more successful responses, candidates kept within the word limit and expressed content points in their own words, to some extent, whilst attempting to organize the points using cohesive devices effectively. All content points proved accessible, however. Some points made by candidates tended to lack the required precision or key details. For example, it was not always clearly conveyed that the writer learned to identify common perfume ingredients, or that the instructor stressed the importance of keeping a record of the exact amounts used. Language marks were awarded across the range, with many candidates generally gaining at least 4 marks. Several candidates relied heavily on the key words in the text, but many successfully chose suitable synonyms. Additionally, some responses demonstrated good summary techniques by restructuring the grammar of sentences and linking points appropriately, e.g. noting accurately the quantity of each ingredient used is highly important and was stressed by the instructor, as well as how to strike the perfect balance between these different ingredients. This rewording of the text resulted in marks in the higher bands for language.
So here, the candidate included 2 content points in one sentence. He did some sort of rewording by using his own words, and he did some sort of restructuring by changing the structure of that sentence. So I believe now you understand the idea of writing a summary. It's simple. The idea is, first, you will have to read the question very carefully. Try to get all the points that answer the question. After getting all the points, make sure that these points are complete points, then try to rewrite them using your own words. If you cannot use your own words, try to change the structure of the sentence. It's better if you could reorganize the points somehow by putting 2 points in one sentence. Try to use cohesive devices. If you did all that without any grammatical or vocabulary mistakes like spelling, tenses, and all these stuff, I think it's not hard for you to get 15 or 16 out of 16. In the next video, I'm going to show you the same exercise here with 3 different candidate responses which were marked by Cambridge examiners. I hope you have enjoyed the video. If you found that this content is useful to you, please share it with your friends and press the subscribe button. Thank you, and have a good day. Goodbye.